Okay. I'm sure we'll get a few more people bobbing in over the next couple of minutes, but let's make a start. Hi, everyone. My name is Louise. I work at Flex Legal. For those of you who don't know, Flex Legal is a platform that does flexible on-demand legal support. So we have over 5,700 legal professionals on our platform, and we connect them with busy legal teams who need very short-term, short notice support. Today's event is all around SQE and the qualifying work experience. And in particular, we're really delving into the concept of pro bono work and how this can help you now qualify as a solicitor. So for today's running, James is going to kickstart everything off with a bit of a warm up, and then I'm going to hand over to our Chief Operating Officer, Sam Gunn. Sam, if you give us a wave. So Sam is our resident expert on all things SQE and is going to explain in more detail how the new qualifying work experience system works. And we'll also give everyone an overview of our journal, which helps you to record and document it. Please for today, if you can kind of keep yourself on mute, and if you want to keep your video on and off, it's up to you. But I will spotlight Sam, so she is our speaker for today. We really encourage you to ask questions. SQE and QWE is a brand new topic. There is no such thing as a silly question. Please do ask. If you can, please add them into the chat function as we're going along. Then Sam will make sure we've got plenty of time at the end to really go into that and make sure we answer all of your questions. If you would like to do a bit of networking, please do introduce yourself in the chat function, say where you're calling from, and feel free to tell us about the weather. I'm calling from Manchester and the weather is miserable. So please do introduce yourself. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to James.
Awesome. Right. Let me just sort of close this down. So you should all be able to see this. If everybody who is interested in taking part could just go on a second device to slido.com. Be that a phone, be that a tablet, whatever it is. It's very user-friendly. You can even use a QR code if that's your jam, if that's your thing. And we're just going to start with just a few very simple warm-up questions, just sort of about the SQE, pro bono, etc. I'm sure you all know how quizzes work at this point. We all did plenty of Zoom quizzes in first lockdown, and they're making a comeback apparently. So here we go. Yeah, when you get to Slido as well, you'll see it'll sort of prompt you for kind of a numerical code. Just punch in 463692, the number that you should be able to see there, and it'll take you to basically just sort of our room where we can ask the questions as well. Sam, Louise, Christine, you can also feel free to take part. Don't be shy. It's all accessible. You know, it's open to everyone. Just gonna go ahead into our first thing. Okay, so people just want to take a look there. So just a bit of a sort of word cloud to sort of start us off with, bit of an open prompt, generally on the SQE, all quite a new concept to us all. Still, if you are joining, just join at slido.com and then put the number in there. The SQE makes me feel totally up to you. Be free form, put what you want. No answer is wrong. Lots of people saying nervous, which is exciting and worrying. Yeah, it's interesting to see the sort of like general response that people are having to the SQE. Definitely shaking things up, if nothing else. Obviously, the ones that we've got emerging there: excited, unsure, nervous, curious. I like curious is good, and I do definitely recognize and respect whoever said no concern. I think that is commendable, if nothing else. and I admire your honesty and bravery in equal measure. Okay, so I think that's given us a little bit of an idea of how people are generally feeling about the SQE. Next up, slightly more specific question. What do you feel is a better qualification, LPC or SQE? Obviously, a little bit of a difficult one to kind of pin down. You know, the SQE isn't completely in effect yet. I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, Sam, but it will be coming into effect in, what is it, early September?
Yeah, that's right. As it will be kind of kicking off in September, but there's a kind of long transitional period where they're both running in parallel.
Okay, cool. So I think that's kind of interesting to see that, you know, already, even though it's not sort of properly kicked off yet, there's more or less a kind of even keel here as people are answering, which is nice to see. SQE is ever so slightly edging it, which obviously for an SQE themed event, we are very, very happy to see. So that is tremendously cool. Just a third and final question before I pass back over to Sam. How well informed do you feel about the SQE? And this will definitely, I think, paint a bit of a picture for us as to where we're all kind of coming in at today. So I'm quite informed, I'm very informed, I know a little bit, or I know very little / nothing, which thus far does seem to be by far the strongest one. In fact, it's almost the complete inverse of the order in which I typed them out, which is odd to see. But yeah, so the overwhelming sort of answers there are I know a little bit, or I know very little / nothing, which isn't unexpected. I mean, you know, it's still a new qualification, a new route, so no one's going to have sort of the complete picture as of yet. But hopefully, at the end of this session, people will be a little bit more informed, especially in relation to pro bono work. And with that, I think I'm going to pass over to you, Sam, if that's okay. So that should lead us into things. Let me just stop sharing first and foremost.
Okay, very good. I now just need to share my screen, which is always a daunting prospect. Can James, can you just give me a thumbs up to let me know that you can see that all right?
Yeah, we can see that. That's perfectly fine. Very
good. Okay, cool. So yeah, I mean, thanks everyone so much for joining us today. It's really great to see so many people here. And just to kind of reiterate what Louise was saying earlier, please do feel free to ask questions throughout in the chat. I've left kind of a good 20 to 30 minutes for Q&A at the end, so lots of time to answer those questions, and definitely no such thing as a stupid question for sure. So in terms of what we're going to go through today, first I'll just give a bit more. Louise did a great job about talking about Flex earlier, but I'll just give a little bit of background of why we're so keen on the SQE. Then do a little bit of a background in what that is, what that entails, when it's coming, and a little bit about qualifying work experience, what the opportunities are within the pro bono space that we see, and then I'll give a little bit of a demo of the journal that Louise was referring to earlier, that allows you to track and monitor your experience. And then, as I said, we've got time for the Q&A at the end. So yeah, probably 20 to 30 minutes of me talking at you first. So just to kick off a little bit about Flex, we were founded in 2016 by Mary Bonsor, who is an ex-property litigator, and James Moore, our CTO. And probably since 2016, since we launched the recruitment side of our business, we've really seen a lot of, we've had a lot of access to seeing people who've been stuck in that training contract bottleneck that people talk about, and kind of off the back of that, we've been huge supporters and in contact a lot with the SRA about the SQE since its inception, almost since Flex's inception in 2016. So we're really excited about the opportunities that are kind of afforded by the SQE and the flexibility that it brings into the qualification. And so over this time we've been thinking, well, how can we help support people in going through the qualifying their qualifying work experience, and which is where we came up with our Flex Legal Journal, which allows people to digitally track all their experience, ready to kind of upload to the SRA as part of their SQE qualification. So yeah, this is where we are today. Lots of, over 250 clients, both in-house and law firms, and lots of kind of paralegals and lawyers on our books. So just to jump into the background on the SQE, obviously we've got quite a variation on the call from the poll earlier of levels of knowledge. So we'll just kind of start from the beginning, really. So I think the first thing to note about the SQE is obviously, what is it? It's the replacement for the LPC and training contract route, which currently is in place to qualify as a solicitor. I think it's probably really important at this point to talk about a little bit about why it was introduced by the SRA. So in part it was because to standardize the testing of solicitors and make sure that everyone was reaching the same standard, but also to increase the learning standards and reduce the cost in training to become a solicitor, and also to offer the opportunity to grow diversity within the legal profession by adding a lot of flexibility, lots more flexibility into the way that you train to become a solicitor, and that's something that we're kind of huge champions of at Flex. So what does the SQE entail? So it's split into four parts, really. So you've got your SQE1, which is your functional legal knowledge exam. The SQE2, which is your practical legal assessment, 2 years of qualifying work experience, full-time or equivalent, and then the ability to meet the SRA's suitability and character requirements, which basically just means no criminal record, dishonesty, credit or money issues. To delve a little bit deeper into each of the examinations. So the SQE1 is multiple choice questions. It's about 10 hours of examinations, split into 2 assessments over 2 separate days, and they're just 2 assessments split by legal area, and that you can take that for the first time in I think it's the 8th and the 11th of November in 2021. So that's starting this year, SQE1. SQE2, on the other hand, is practical legal assessments. So these assessment areas will cover things such as client interview and legal analysis, advocacy, legal research, legal writing, drafting, and that's split into an oral and written skills test, and again that is launching in April 2022, and again will be split out into two sessions. So I think the next thing just to cover about the SQE, and it's something that obviously has been come up quite a lot in the press lately, is the kind of cost versus the current system. So I think the first thing to note is what is the current system. So you currently have to have an LLB or GDL plus the LPC plus the 2-year training contract and professional skills course. So the cost for this at the moment are somewhere between kind of 9,000 to 13,000 for the GDL if you need to do that, and the LPC is an additional 12 to 17,000. So the main difference with the cost of the SQE is just that different parts of it are not mandatory anymore. A really good analogy that I've heard used about the SQE is that it's much more like a driving test. So you've got your theory, you have your practical exam, but it doesn't matter how many lessons you take. There's no kind of prerequisite number of lessons. You can take no lessons and go and pass your practical. It's just that examination that you pass at the end, which is what gives you the ability to get your driving license at the end. So in terms of that, the only mandatory costs that you have to do with the SQE are the SQE1 and the SQE2, which in combination come to £3,980. Obviously, with the SQE1 being a little bit cheaper and SQE2 being a little bit more expensive. Now, you also need a degree or equivalent, but you can do an apprenticeship as an equivalent to a degree, and obviously the cost of this vary. Now, on top of this, there are all of the prep courses, and the cost of these kind of vary quite wildly depending on your level of experience, what you really need to get out of the training before the exams. So on the cheaper end of the scale, you've got QLTS, who are offering an SQE1 prep course starting from £1,500, and then on the full end of the other end of the spectrum, University of Law in Barbary got a full LLM for £16,500. So on the one hand, some of that's where it can be almost comparable pricing to what there is currently, or you have the option to do a cheaper course as well. I think one of the things also just to note on this at the moment is many of the providers that kind of mentioned on here are offering introductory discounts at the moment for their courses, and the ability to retake the courses for free if you don't pass the examination the first time. So you can take those courses as many times as you need to. So yeah, as I was saying, in terms of how this compares, it could end up working out roughly the same, or it could be much cheaper depending on the options that you pick. But what it really does add in is flexibility. Your qualifying work experience can be obtained at any point during the period, so you are able to kind of spread out the costs and earn while you learn on your route to qualification, which does open up additional opportunities and the ability to do it slightly more cheaply. So next, on to a little bit more detail about qualifying work experience, and what that entails. So what counts as qualifying work experience? It's really, so what you have to get to as part of your SQE is 2 years of full-time or equivalent of qualifying work experience. And this is any legal services experience that offers the opportunity to attain one or more of the 18 competencies laid out in the SRA Statement of Solicitor Competence. It can be collected retrospectively, So you can start banking that experience now, and there is no sort of time frame on how far back you can count that retrospective work. But the one thing that it is probably worth noting is that is all dependent on what is possible for your supervisor, how far back your supervisor at the time was willing to go in terms of signing that off, and what the individual circumstances are in that instance. But the SRA haven't put any time limits on how far back you can go retrospectively. It can, so yeah, as I said, it can be collected real time or retrospectively, but it can also be paid or unpaid, and it can be obtained in England and Wales, or overseas, as long as it is approved by a solicitor registered in England and Wales. The one thing that it is worth noting is that it does have to be real life. So simulated experience doesn't count towards your 2 years of qualifying work experience. It's not to say that simulated experience can't be a helpful addition in lots of ways, particularly when you're trying to potentially plug gaps in things that you haven't managed to get experience in during your 2 years of qualifying work experience. But as you actually don't have to gain experience against each of the areas of competencies to complete your period of qualifying work experience. So yeah, definitely still a place for it, but it does not count towards that 2 years of qualifying work experience. So the next thing is about where that can be obtained. Just a little bit more on the 2 years. There's actually no strict hours guidelines from the SRA about what that 2 years means. Candidates will have to use their judgment a little bit to determine what counts as two years, and it can be obtained full-time, part-time, or in blocks over a longer period of time as well. It is designed to be flexible. So it can take place in a wide range of organisations providing legal services. That includes law clinics, law firms, in-house, and you can collect it in up to 4 organisations. So it can be across multiple different types of these organisations as well. So just to sort of reiterate what it says on the slide, you've got on placements during law degrees, that work counts, working clinics, voluntary and charitable organisations, that all counts as qualifying work experience. Work as a paralegal, or on the kind of standard training contract route as well, that work would also count as qualifying work experience. So next, I think it's important to talk about what the approval process is for qualifying work experience. It must all be confirmed by a solicitor or COLP who is registered with the SRA, so registered within England and Wales. The important thing here to note on that approvals process is that that person who is confirming that experience is not confirming any level of competence within those competencies, only that the candidate that they are overseeing or has had the opportunity to attain the competencies that they have laid out in their experience. For each placement, the things that do need to be confirmed are just the details of the experience in terms of the dates and the length of time, the competencies from the statement of competence that the candidate had the opportunity to develop over that time period, and then if there were any issues around the character and suitability of the candidate, a detailed description of exactly what they are. That's not something that would stop someone from submitting their qualifying work experience. It's then for the SRA to decide whether or not that would be enough to stop that period of experience counting or stop that person from qualifying. Again, that's all kind of taken out of the hands of the person that in the existing system doing the training contract to decide, and kind of put back in the hands of the SRA and of the candidate to kind of come to that decision. So the the other thing to note here is that actually it's on my next slide. If your supervisor is not a solicitor, that's also okay. QWE does have to be confirmed by a solicitor, but they don't actually have to be the person that's directly overseeing the work that's done. And actually they can be outside of the organisation altogether. And again, just to reiterate, it's the opportunity to attain the competency, not that they've met any specific standard. Where someone is a solicitor who hasn't overseen the work directly, the one thing that they do need to do is confirm the dates and the experience and the details of that with someone who has more kind of day-to-day knowledge of the work that the person was doing. So it does mean that, you know, work that isn't overseen by a solicitor can also count towards your qualifying work experience. So just in terms of what opportunities this might bring to the pro bono space. So split this into clinics and also and the opportunities for the students and the volunteers as well. So the first two things here really kind of tap into the same thing. There will be a wider volunteer market, and the opportunity for clinics to allow a route to qualification is something that currently isn't there. But also the flexibility in the system will allow there to be a wider volunteer market for law clinics, as people who couldn't historically use that as part of their training contract or their training experience can kind of include that in as part of their part or all of that 2 years of experience. The other thing the other big change that there is with qualifying work experience versus the existing route is that there is no longer a need to do a contentious seat as part of the training. So, you know, that's just another area of flexibility that's added in that may provide an opportunity for people to increase access to secondees from in-house or law firms who might have more opportunity to second people out to do pro bono work. On top of this, with as things progress, the SQE should increase the diversity of skill sets in people who have the post qualification, and this should really allow there to be kind of more kind of diversity in that for law clinics to tap into as well. In terms of what the opportunities for the students and the volunteers are, obviously, just to reiterate from the previous slide, you can now use this experience to qualify. The other thing that it gives you is the opportunity to create more of a bespoke training program for yourself, what it is that you want to do, and kind of almost build your own way to becoming a solicitor, getting all the experience that you want. The other thing, really major thing, which I've touched on before, is the increased flexibility that we really see within the SQE. So the ability to qualify part-time or with breaks, the ability to supplement your work with other kind of other things on the side as well. All of that is now possible where it hasn't been in the past. And also you can, as a kind of student, you can bank your experience gained during your studies, which can allow you to qualify quicker once you have completed them. as just to kind of touch on the stuff that we were talking about earlier as well, in terms of the prep courses that are available, there is a wider spectrum, and these can be done at different points during your training. The only thing to note at that point is that SQE1 has to be done before SQE2, but that does allow kind of different cost options, so hopefully reducing the cost of qualification depending on what your requirements are. So the next thing I just wanted to do quickly was to jump into a bit of a demo of our Flex journal. So what the journal really allows candidates to do is to record, collect and track their experience, monitor their progress against the SRA's competency framework, and also manage feedback and required confirmations that they require from their supervisors and from the solicitors. I'll just jump onto this and hope that this works. Right, so yeah, what I'll just show you is just a quick run through of what it looks like to complete some work experience using the Flex journal. So the first thing that you would do is set up a journal and give it a name. So this is a journal, just works as a placement for a time period at a singular organisation. So I'll just set one up for my time at Flex.
Sam, is it possible for you to zoom in a little bit?
Yeah, it might actually be better if you give me a second. I might stop sharing and share on my smaller screen, because I realised no one else has my bionic eyes. Give me 1 second. There you go. Is that a bit better?
Yes, thanks.
Oh, sorry about that. I always forget my big screen doesn't work so well. So then you choose the organisation that work experience goes under. Create that journal, and then you start to record your experience within this space. Now, the one thing that we have done in building the journal is we tried to build in to go a bit above and beyond what the current, so the SRA actually have their own template that you can use, a PDF that you can download and record your experience. We on the one hand digitized that, on the other hand also added in a few more reflective learning questions to really help you, the candidates who are using it, develop and become kind of the best lawyers they can be. But all of the reflective learning questions that we've got built into this are optional, so it's not compulsory to submit the experience, but it's just something that we feel quite strongly about in terms of learning development. So the next thing that you would do is give the entry of title. So I'll just use this as my April experience. This can be done via time, it can be done by task or project. It's really very much up to how the individual and the candidate and the supervisor want to work. Put in the hours worked, and then describe what was done during that placement, during this piece of work. Next, we've got some of the reflective learning questions. And the next thing that's really, really important here is that it shows, this allows you to track which areas of the competency statement you got experience in during that piece of work. So you can add multiple different competencies at that stage and tick whichever ones are relevant to the piece of work. Then talk about how you can evidence that you did have the opportunity to attain those competencies. And again, there are some more reflective learning questions down here. Once you've created that entry, you would then start to build up your experience in the journal. But for this, the purpose of this one, what I'll just do is just go through the process of submitting it to a supervisor. Once I've submitted it to myself, which makes it really easy for me to then just jump into the supervisor screen, just show you what then the supervisor would then see. So go in here, I've now got this, this new piece of experience to review. As the person who's directly overseeing this, so this person, as I said, doesn't have to be a solicitor, just someone that has overseen the piece of work. I would then go and approve that entry. I can add comments or notes or request that changes are made, maybe the dates or the specific competencies, and I think that they might need changing, but for this one we'll just approve that entry. I can jump back in. So now I'm looking at it from a candidate's perspective, and I can see that that my entry has now been submitted and approved by my supervisor. The next thing I would do is obviously continue to add my experience there, but for the purpose of this, let's assume that that is all the experience that I had done in that placement. I'm then able to submit that the full placement, the full journal for review by my supervisor. Again, I'll just submit that to myself so I can show you. It can be the same supervisor that's overseeing your day-to-day, or it can be the same, or it can be a supervisor that is different or outside of the organization. Just have to click that they are a supervisor, and I can submit that to them to see. Jumping back into my supervisor view, sorry, I hope this isn't too confusing. I can then go onto my journals and I can see that I have a new candidate down here to review. I'm then able to look at all their experience, how much time they've got towards their qualifying work experience. And I can click into this and see any comments that were left by the supervisor. And also see how this person has done against all of the competencies in the framework. So just go on to approve this. All I have to do as a supervisor is select that I am a solicitor. Either I've reviewed or have received feedback from someone who has seen this person's work. Provide my SRA number, confirm the length and the opportunity to attain the competencies is correct. Confirm whether or not there were any character and suitability issues with that, and then I can go down and confirm that that journal is complete. If I jump back into my candidate view, I can now see that that journal has now been approved, and the bit of functionality that we're currently developing at the moment is going to be the ability to just download the form that you can then upload directly into the qualifying work experience portal that the SRA have recently launched to allow people to upload their experience. The final thing that I'll just quickly show you on this is as a candidate, I'm also able to then look and see an overview of all of the different competencies within the solicitor statement of competence and how I am getting on towards getting experience against different areas in that. So I can see where I might have gaps, and this is helpful when it comes to doing the SQE2 qualification, as this sort of acts as the curriculum for that. And then also there's a little gauge up here to let you know how you're getting on you know, towards the 2 years that is required. Cool. And next I'll jump back into here and we have 20 minutes for Q&A.
Thanks, Sam. That was great. Right, so we do actually have a few questions. Are you all right if I just sort of rattle them off at you? Is that okay?
That would be ideal, because it means I don't have to read them off myself.
That's all right. Tell you what, let me just pop my camera on. Can you see me okay? I can't actually. Oh, no, it's because you're pinned. That's fine. Right, so we have had a few questions in the chat, so I'll just go through them in sort of chronological order in which they appeared. So our first question was from Daniel, saying, regarding counting retrospective work experience, e.g. placement year during a law degree, is it mandatory to have the full calculation of all the hours we have done, as it may be difficult for some to remember how many hours they worked if it was for the period of a year? Would just be stating the time period in our SQE journals, e.g. 6 months.
Yeah, so what, yeah, because as I was saying earlier about the time period that the SRA stipulate, there isn't a specific number of hours that you need to do. Basically, if you're using our journal, what I would suggest you do is just do a crude calculation of what 6 months is in hours, and put that in. It's the hours calculation isn't something that gets pulled through into the stuff, into what you upload to the SRA. So yeah, that's absolutely fine. The hours calculation is very much a kind of crude metric.
Okie doke. Hope that helps, Daniel. Hope that answers your question. We've also had a question from Belle Woodhouse, but I don't think it's sort of particularly QUE or pro bono focused, Belle. So I think a couple of people have tried to answer that one in the chat. So if you could just look there, there are some resources there. We've also had a question from Nicholas saying, as the SQE requires us to do qualifying work experience at up to 4 organisations, doesn't this mean there will only be 4 entries on the Flex Legal QUE journal?
So perhaps that was badly, I was whizzing through it too fast. I didn't explain it very well. So what you would have, if you were doing it in 4 organisations, you would have up to 4 journals. You could actually have more journals than 4, as long you could have 2 journals within a singular organisation. When it comes to the specific entries, how particularly when you're doing this in real time versus retrospective, what I would be suggesting that you were doing would be either a monthly kind of overview of the work that you've done, or doing it by project. So filling in this experience as and when you're having it, and how I would decide how to do that is after a conversation with my supervisor. Mm-hmm. So it would be about kind of how you want to work together to make sure that you're capturing the work that you've done and getting the most out of it. So you would have multiple journal entries likely in a time period. The only time when that's probably less true is if you're kind of doing a long piece of retrospective.
Okay, good stuff. Hope that answers your question, Nicholas. We've got quite a lot of other people posting questions in the chat now, so I'll keep these coming. I think a couple of people, you have messaged me privately. You can just put them in the general chat, but I'll keep reading them out. We've also had a question saying, wondering how do I start organising my QUE and also studying/booking the prep courses?
So organising your QWE in terms of setting up the experience. So I mean, I'll give a little shout out to Flex on that one. We obviously do find people legal placements. On top of that, I would say, depending on what stage you're at, you know, as a student, I'd be looking to apply to law clinics and set up experience like that way. And yeah, those sorts of things are the things I would be doing. Recruiters and looking at a law clinic, systems advice, that sort of things, applying for different roles there to kind of get on the kind of QPE ladder. Again, just to reiterate what I was saying earlier about kind of communication, I think it's really, really good to be having conversations up front when you're starting kind of placements with people who are overseeing your work, to make sure that to say you want to use it to kind of track it as part of your qualifying work experience, rather than just sort of like tracking it and sending it. It's just always better to kind of have those conversations up front. And sorry, what was the second part of that question, James?
The second part was about studying/booking the prep courses. How can they begin doing that?
So there's a huge amount of there's a lot of prep courses that have kind of come into the market, and as I was saying earlier, it's just a case of what is right for your personal circumstances. So I'd really be doing some research at looking at what the kind of different courses entail, whether they are online or in person, and kind of just sort of reading up on the literature around each of those courses to figure out what is right for your personal circumstances. Looking at, you can look at ULaw, BPP, Barbary, QLTS. That there's lots of kind of places offering prep courses. I'd really be doing kind of research around what I think the best option is for me. If you've done a law degree versus not done a law degree, there's just a lot of options out there. So I'd be kind of comparing what was out there as well.
Okay, good stuff. I hope that answers the question. We've also had, I think we've come up against this question before. I think this might test you a little bit, Sam. Is the SQE1 and SQE2 exams mandatory for foreign qualified experienced lawyers as well, or can they get some exemptions?
Yeah, so foreign qualified lawyers are exempt from the qualifying work experience. And how it depends on if you're partway through the existing process or not, whether you can get exemptions from the SQE1 or SQE2. There is quite specific guideline. There are exemptions that you can have, that you can get from the different from SQE1, SQE2, depending on basically how far through you are through the current process. But I can follow up with some more. If you leave me your email in the chat, I can follow up with some more detailed information on what that entails exactly.
I think that question was from Asad Jamil. So if you could just privately message either myself or Sam with your email address, we can get back to you on that one. We've also had a question saying, if you work at the CAB and would like to start the QUE, can I start right away?
Start your qualifying work experience. Yeah, you can start recording your qualifying work experience straight away. Yeah, is the answer.
Short and sweet, I like it. Next up, we've got, will qualifying through the SQE route without a training contract make it harder to get into private practice?
Very interesting and good question. I think it, I would say at the moment there's a lot of hesitancy in the kind of wider market about kind of what people should do, which route they should be looking for, depending on what they want, what kind of lawyer they want to be. So, if your aspirations are, to go and join a magic circle firm, then, you know, my advice would probably be, you know, you might want to start banking some of your experience for qualifying work experience, because that's not going to do you any harm. And especially if you're starting to do some like reflective learning and things like that, it's only going to help you in the long run. But I would still be looking at the training contract route. If for example, your kind of aspirations as a lawyer are to kind of work in-house or in a very specific area, then, you know, I would then be looking potentially at looking at the SQE route over the training contract route. It basically is very much dependent on kind of like where your future kind of aspirations as a lawyer lie.
Okie doke. Hopefully that answers the question as well. We've got another one saying, is the work done in another country? Is the work done in another country relevant as work experience? And what are the requirements to work in a law clinic? I think let's start with the first half of that question. So is the work done in another country relevant as, I think that's qualifying work experience that's supposed to be?
Yeah, yes, it can be. The only requirement is that it is approved by a solicitor registered in England and Wales. So again, what I was saying earlier about how you don't have to be overseen by someone who is that, as long as they have a conversation with someone who does hold that qualification. So if you can find a you know, if you've done some work abroad and there is a solicitor within that firm who is qualified in England and Wales, that might be a way of getting that experience signed off. They might have to have a conversation with your direct supervisor. Or it is possible to do that in the UK. And there are actually a couple of people who are offering their services on a kind of like monthly retainer basis to be that person that oversees and kind of signs off on your qualifying work experience. And it might be that might be something I would be looking into if I was trying to get kind of a broad work experience confirmed, if there was no one within that firm that I could kind of that met the criteria.
Okie doke. We've also had another question from Natalia, which I think has asked a very, very similar one to this. So hopefully that answered, or your question was answered in the sort of previous response, Natalia. We've had a question saying, if retrospective work experience qualifies and there's no time frame, can you add a week's work experience at a law firm from around 2 to 3 years ago in the Flex Journal? So quite a specific one there.
Yeah, I mean, technically, yes. I think that you might struggle to get the person who oversaw that experience to confirm it, or to kind of remember it, would be my concern. The other thing is just to note that, you know, you can only, if you have up to 4 organizations. So, you know, I would be sort of tracking weeks work experience here and there as a learning and development tool personally, but you know, a week's work experience isn't going to make much of a dent in that into that 2 years, and then you sort of only have the 3 other organizations. So I would say on balance it probably wouldn't be worth tracking that.
Okie doke. Another question from Daniel, hitting us with the long questions, Daniel. There's a recurring theme here. What would your advice be for aspiring barristers who take interest in recording QUE, but still ultimately want to be barristers? Would you say it is still useful for their personal development, or is there a barrister equivalent to the SQE in the works?
Oh, good question. And one I have to say that I do not know the answer to the second part of that question. I think it is really worthwhile. I'm a big kind of advocate of reflective learning and how that can help you kind of develop some really good and useful skills in your kind of career, whatever that may be. We actually, when we were kind of creating the Flex Journal, we were looking at a lot of other industries. So we kind of pulled in stuff from the medical industry and how they kind of do it. So it's I think it's really useful for anyone to do. So yes, in that regard, but to my knowledge, that there isn't a similar change coming in for barristers. For this, so I think the route there, as far as I'm aware, is just remaining the same.
Okay, hopefully that answers it for you, Daniel. I just, in the interest of time, I can see that Rachel has just popped a question in the chat, but I'm just going to, in the interest of fairness, just quickly jump to some of the questions we got from Instagram. And then we'll jump back onto the chat. And no worries, Daniel, about the essays. We completely understand. So one question that we received on Instagram: would firms be keen on taking you on as a newly qualified solicitor that haven't been trained in different seats?
Yeah, good question. I still don't think that we know enough. I mean, I think it really depends on what your experience has been. So it depends what role that you're going for within the firm, and what your experience is and how that matches to that. If for example, you kind of have you've done a bunch of commercial, you're going for a commercial role in a firm, and you've kind of your qualifying work experience includes some commercial, some in-house, some all that sort of thing. I think you actually might be in a stronger position than someone who's kind of gone and done all those four seats, because you might have more relevant experience for that. But it very much is going to depend on what your experience has been and how that meshes to the specific role that you're applying for in that firm.
Okie doke. I think we'll just have to gloss through some of these, because I think you touched on some pretty similar stuff. One good question we had from Instagram was, where can I obtain pro bono experience if I'm interested in doing so? Which is a very good question.
Yeah, so there's lots of places. I mean, universities have law clinics. There is citizens advice. Lots of So I mean, those would be the kind of two places I would look. There's LawWorks is a kind of great resource for looking at all the different kind of law clinics that are available. I would kind of point you in that in their direction to kind of see huge lists.
Cool. I think there's also when we were sort of prepping for this session, the National Pro Bono Centre. If worth a Google if you are looking for pro bono experience, everyone. I'm just going to jump back onto the question from Rachel. The BTC for barristers has only come in recently. It doesn't appear that there's any plan to change the routes again. So barristers, oh wait, I think this might be a response to a previous question actually. It doesn't appear that there is any plan to change the route again. So barristers still need a QLD and then the BTC plus pupillage. Yeah, sorry, that was totally my mistake. That is in fact just a response to a previous question.
That was a much better response than I gave to that question. So thank you, Rachel, for that. I appreciate that.
Don't talk yourself down, Sam. It's not on. It's not on. Okay, I think in the interest of time, we might just have to stop there because we have just gone a minute over, I realise. We have leapt over the 6 o'clock mark. I'm not sure if you just want to come back on, Louise, and quickly sort of round things to a close.
I would just add quickly before Louise does that, if there is anything else that sort of comes up that you kind of thought of during it and you haven't had a chance to ask, I would just recommend we have an email address, sque at flex.legal, that you can email, and we can kind of come back to you with any responses on that as well.
Okay, I don't think Louise can join us at the moment, so I think we'll just wrap up. So thank you everyone for attending. Hopefully that helped everyone and gave everyone a lot of sort of handy information. If you do have any other questions, or if there's anything else that you're sort of interested in knowing about the SQE or the Flex Legal Journal, Kiwi Record, just check out our website. Really, really good resource. If there's any questions that you maybe want to put to us that you didn't get a chance to ask in the chat, you can always reach out to us on Instagram or just find our contact information on our website. On that point, follow us on Instagram. I can personally vouch for the quality of our feed. It's very, very strong. And yeah, thank you everyone for taking part. I hope you all enjoyed the session. If anyone's interested in any future Flex events, in a few weeks we've got the next virtual lunch coming up, which you can sign up for on Eventbrite, and that's all about automation, technology, the world of legal robots coming in, and basically just what that's going to mean for the legal profession. It's going to be a really, really exciting event. So yeah, I hope that's very, very handy for everyone. Thank you all for attending. Sam, any final thoughts?
Oh, no, I think you did a great job, James. Great job.
Thank you.
And my only final thought is just to say that we at Flex are very excited about the SQE. Very, very excited.
Very, very excited. Okay, well, yeah, thank you very much, everyone. And we'll hopefully see you all at the next session, whenever it is. So thank you and goodbye.
Bye.